today's Locked On Predators, we are going to describe for you in detail the greatest hockey moment of the entire Nashville Predators season, hands down, that happened last night. Oh, and the Predators actually won.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to kick off this Friday game recap episode, giving a shout out to our amazing Locked On Predators insiders community and to our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. We appreciate your support. We love getting through this season together as a collective. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio. And my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Big show today. Big show. Huge. We are going to talk about what is hands down the greatest hockey moment of the season. I don't know, maybe of any season since the 2017 Stanley Cup Finals that happened last night at Bridgestone Arena. Of course, we are going to talk about the fact that the Nashville Predators won a game, and they won it in a shootout. We're going to break down who the heroes of the game were. We're going to talk about that shootout win. Plus, there were some big words from Marcus Foligno ahead of Saturday night's game against the Minnesota Wild in regards to Zachary L'Heureux and his suspension. We're going to tell you what we think of his comments, and we're going to look ahead to that game tomorrow. Emma, what a game last night. And this is what I will say, just starting off. Thank you, Nashville Predators. Because Emma knows this, but what a journey for me to get to that game, friends. Driving to the game, and I have a tire blowout on 65. And
not just any tire blowout. I have never seen anything like this.
No, I will publish a picture. We'll put a picture up on Twitter at LO_Predators. So you can see the magnificence and mystery of this tire blowout on 65 in traffic. Did not lose control of the car. I give myself lots of credit. How I'm not in NASCAR at this point, I don't know. My confidence is sky high. Somehow got to a gas station. My husband was about 45 minutes away. First of all, let me preface this by saying I do know how to change a tire, but I could not get the spare out of the trunk. So there I am in my nice leather pants, my white sweater, wrestling the spare out of my car. And I just want to give a shout out to two gentlemen who volunteered to help me. Mike, coming from Vanderbilt Hospital where he was visiting family, stopped at this gas station and said, "Let me help you." And I said, "If you'll just pull the spare out." He said, "No, ma'am, I'm going to change your tire." And then Dante, who is an angel sent by God, said, "Oh, let me help you guys," whips out a motorized jack and a like battery operated lug nut thing and like could have been on NASCAR. I'm on the road. Made it with my grilled cheese for puck drop, which was miraculous because Emma was getting the frantic text.
Well, I was stressed out for you, and I'm so impressed that you got there by puck drop. I think we have to give a shout out to the Predators for that one because of the pregame ceremony for the Golden Hall inductees. That gave you a little bit more time, but y'all, she was in her seat. Even if so, again, I'm with you. I'm like, if the Predators had lost that game after all of that, but even after all, if I had been through all that, I don't even know that I still would have gone. I'd be like, I'm done. I'm done.
I'm going to be honest with you. If it was like Nashville versus Winnipeg, I might have just called it and turned around and gone home. But I'm like, no, surely we can get the win against Chicago. And friends, it was not an easy feat. They really had me second guessing my life choices all the way up through the end of the third period when Filip Forsberg, hero Forsberg, gets it done and ties the game up. It goes to overtime. Predators win it in a shootout. And we're going to give you some more details on all of that But we always, of course, kick off our game recaps with one word to describe the game. And Emma, I'm gonna steal the thunder on this one because my one word isn't one word, but it describes what I think has to be the greatest hockey moment that has occurred at Bridgestone Arena since the Stanley Cup Finals in 2017. And I will stand by this moment because in the first period, the Nashville Predators get a power play. And simultaneously, as if the hockey gods opened the heavens and rained down light beams on Bridgestone Arena, on Fang Vision appears George Kittle, who I adore, chugging a beer as simultaneously Steven freaking Stamkos, who it still shocks me we get to say is a Nashville Predator, scores a power play goal. And I literally was like, Lord, I can come home now. This was the most beautiful hockey thing I think I've ever seen in my life. It was the greatest moment in the season that has not had a lot of great moments. But it's even if we make it to the postseason, if we go on a great run, I'm going to be hard pressed to love a hockey moment more than George Kittle chugging as Steven Stamkos scores.
It was pretty poetic, yes. And then I think George tweeted afterwards, he said, put me in your parlay for assists. He was taking credit for the assist on that goal from Stamkos. I'm going to say we know that Kittle is good friends with Filip Forsberg. So my one word for the game is actually 3 words because we make the rules and we break the rules. So my 3 words / 1 word for the game, this is Sparta, because if you know what I'm talking about, that means you've seen the movie 300. 300 is the number of NHL goals that Filip Forsberg has now scored. He's the 9th Swedish player in history to do that. Obviously, this is not new, but he's the franchise leader in scoring for the Predators. And that goal, what a goal it was that he scored in the 3rd period to send the game to overtime. It was a very Stamkos-esque type shot. Not usually the kind of goal that you see from Forsberg. And we talked to him afterwards and he was like, yeah, not many of my 300 goals have been scored like that, but hey, we'll take it. And he said, I guess Stammer's been rubbing off on me a little bit. But just a really kind of a gutsy win, you know. I think that again, this is Sparta, the theme, it fits. I think that this team, it was almost the inverse of the game against Vegas, where Nashville got off, you know, came out guns blazing, jumped out to that early lead. We're up 4-0, and then they let Vegas get back into it at the end. Made it a little too interesting, but managed to hold on for the win. This game against Chicago was kind of the reverse. I was not impressed by Nashville's start. Yes, Stamkos had the power play goal. He had the power play goal in the first period. That was good. But, you know, later in the period, it looked like Nick Foligno had scored a goal for Chicago. They called it back for interference. Chicago challenged the call, but it was upheld. And so then Nashville got a power play out of it for the delay of game for the unsuccessful challenge. Nashville did not put a single shot on goal during the man advantage. I'm like, that's a gimme. That is a free.
Here's your goal.
And they didn't do it. And, you know, I would like to point out when I did the crossover show with Jack from Locked On Blackhawks yesterday, he was talking about this. He's like, this team, since they had the coaching change, they've taken a step back defensively. And so I'm like, perfect time to score some goals, Nashville. But I would also like to point out that I was correct in my prediction.
Yes, you were.
3-2, and Filip Forsberg scored a goal. Now, did not expect it to go to a shootout, but I mean, it's the first shootout of the season, which is pretty remarkable for it to go this long. But, you know, when you lose in overtime that much, you don't get to go to many shootouts.
Yeah,
But I thought it was interesting the choices that Brunette went with the 3 shooters, but he explained them very well. I mean, Ryan O'Reilly, duh, like
Easy.
he's one of the best. But he went out first with Gus Nyquist, which was kind of like, huh, okay, just because Gus hasn't had the best start to the season, and it's like, all right, well, interesting. But Andrew Brunette pointed out, he's like, statistically, Gus Nyquist is one of the best shootout scorers, like maybe of
In
all time.
Yeah, in the league.
And he's right. He's right. I went and looked it up, and he is. And so it was, Nyquist, O'Reilly, Stamkos went 3 for 3 in the shootout, got the win. So again, very gutsy effort. Did not start out well for Nashville, but they were able to really kind of battle back at the end there, and send it to overtime. And so that's kind of where you'd like to see a little bit more consistency from this team, whether it's like starting hot and then tapering off, or starting slow and then ramping it up. It's like these games are getting a little too interesting. We love the wins. We love them, but
Yeah.
So
When my tire blows out, I would also like a blowout on the ice. I was hoping for like 6-1. But look, this season, can Nashville Predators fans be picky? No, this is not a restaurant. We're not taking orders. So this is where we're at. Coming up, we're going to share some of our insiders' one word. We're going to talk just for a moment more about that goal that was called off. We're going to talk about Filip Forsberg as well. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or looking to just add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with that $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Emma, we, of course, are always chatting with our Locked On Predators insiders, and I did have to send them a message because we always send out like a pregame, like, here's what we're thinking, here's what we're watching for, what are you watching for? And we get some, great conversation going on, like anticipating the game and matchups and this. And because I was at the Sit-Go on Charlotte Avenue with a blown out tire, we didn't get to do that. But our Locked On Predators insiders never disappoint when it comes to one words. Corey's one word was, is this allowed? I know. Okay, it's a 3-2 game that didn't end in regulation. Odds are Nashville lost that sucker in overtime. But this time they didn't. They got the win in the shootout, and it was a great shootout. Chris's one word is stammer, and that has 2 meanings. We know the obvious one, but a stammer is also an unplanned interruption of speech. And I think this is how the Predators played. They took a step back from their better play lately, and once again played down to the competition. Emma, this is something that we've talked about before with our insiders, and is this a Nashville Predators phenomenon, or is this something every team wrestles with? We were talking about this last night on Media Row. I was talking to Russell, who actually sits between Emma and I, #pray for Russell. And we were talking about that, and we're like, obviously, because we cover 82 Nashville Predators games, we can see this. But is that something that's typical in the NHL, that teams tend to kind of match energy levels? Because it feels like Nashville does that. They kind of play to the level of their opponent.
Yeah, I mean, I would say not even just the NHL. I'd say across sports, you see that happen. And, I kind of like what Steven Stamkos said after the game, not about that specifically, but about more, I think it still applies here when it's about like knowing, who your matchup is against, and knowing that, like, I mean, let's not beat around the bush here. Chicago, Vegas, very different. Like, one of these is not like the other. So, no NHL player is ever going to be like, oh yeah, like, we knew we had this in the bag. I mean, they're pros. They're not going to do that. But I kind of like what Stamkos said, which was like, look at what our record is. Look at where we are in the standings. We have no business like even thinking about taking that approach to any game. Like, whether, maybe it's subconscious, but I think that, yeah, he's like, no, make no mistake. We are very aware that we have no room to talk right now. So, I think that is definitely not a conscious thing, but, I think you see it a lot.
Yeah, I really do feel like it's interesting you bring up that moment with Stamkos, because that really stood out to me, because he was very, very firm about that, and remember who he is. He is Steven Stamkos. And, when you could be and not wearing two different, Stanley Cup rings to Publix, and you are somebody who's going to be a Hall of Famer and somebody who is just, you hear Steven Stamkos and elite. There is no, like, he's like, in this locker room, you can't even have that excuse in your back pocket. Like, and I think part of what you love about Steven Stamkos, and people talk about this roster as aging, and he, Trotz signed these aging veterans and stuff. That comment right there is why you signed Steven Stamkos. Not just because of the amazing shootout goal and the amazing power play goal, but you signed Steven Stamkos because he stands in the locker room as Steven freaking Stamkos and goes, look at our record. We cannot. And I think that's really key. But yeah, it's a phenomenon. And it's one of those ones where you're like, okay, I want to see Nashville come out. We talk about consistency and set a tone and just go with that tone straight through. Dustin's one word tonight was, here we go, set the tone. After 2.5 periods of sloppy play, Forsberg comes in and just sets the tone for getting to that overtime win. Forsberg is a man on a mission right now and is making things look easy for him once again. Dustin also goes on to say, double bonus points for Forsberg, revealing that Nick Blankenberg's nickname is Blanky. Might be the wimpiest hockey nickname I've heard since Wedgie.
I have a soft spot for it. You know what I find interesting is Quinn Hughes, his nickname is Huggy, which sounds so non-threatening. I mean, like,
that's a diaper, y'all.
I'm like, that's adorable. Huggy. Oh, like, come on. And yeah, Blanky, Huggy.
Blanky, Huggy. So I don't even know. It is, I will say, just as a member of the media, I'm much more comfortable referring to Nick Blankenberg as Blanky than I ever would have been calling Scott Wedgwood Wedgie. And
I thought or Michael McCarron Big Sexy.
Never going to happen. I will never, ever call Michael McCarron that. Ever. And it's
neither.
Not, he's delightful, but
see, I just won't, because I was there for the inception of this nickname, and I just don't want to give him the satisfaction, because I'm like, you can't make up your own nickname. That's not how it works.
No.
So, yeah.
No. Yeah. Gayton's one word is a phrase. He calls Forsberg, quote, the Wizard of Smash. I love that. We talked, of course, to Filip Forsberg post game and asked him, 4 goals in 4 games, of course, hit that 300 goal milestone, 9th Swedish player, y'all, to hit that milestone, and asked him, like, does anything feel different? Do you feel like you're doing anything different? And he's like, no, been doing the same thing. But I tell you what, when Filip Forsberg is on, he is on. He's just on. Lee's one word, Disney original. It felt like a kid's movie where they came in a little cocky, got humbled, questioned everything, and then the heroes were heroes. And that's true. We talk about Filip Forsberg, and we talk about, Gus Nyquist, Ryan O'Reilly, Steven Stamkos, 3 for 3 in the shootout, and they were great. Also want to shout out UC Saros in this game. Now, the second goal kind of got tangled up in his pads, and so it was sort of like, oh, look, UC Saros kind of scored that goal on his own, but it was kind of a weird bounce off the boards behind the net. But we got a chance to talk to him afterward. He's so great. UC Saros, man of few words, asked him, just I'm always fascinated by goaltenders. Goaltenders are so fascinating to me. And just said to him, like, shootouts, love them, hate them. Oh, they're okay.
Good
insight.
As you said, man of few words until he's in a commercial, and then suddenly he becomes Mr. Personality.
Meryl Streep in pads, y'all.
Yes, but
such a good actor.
No, I thought it was interesting his explanation of the goal that he kind of scored on himself. It was a very weird bounce that went off the wall, landed on his stick, and he kind of carried it into the net. Just one of those fluky things. And
yeah.
He did give some explanation that, like, I was not expecting that on a wrist shot. Like, you don't usually see that kind of a bounce from a wrist shot. I'm like, that's very interesting, because again, I'm also fascinated and a little terrified of goaltenders, because for me, like, that's all happening so fast, it would not even register in my head what kind of shot that was, much less anything else. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah. Your brain works that fast.
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. The other thing I will say on the Chicago goal that was disallowed, they challenged, it was upheld. It was waved off immediately. They challenged, it was upheld. And then you'd mentioned Nashville got bupkis on that power play. Chug, George, chug on Fang Vision. Here's what I will say about this. We joking about UC Saros, man, a few words. You knew the minute that UC Saros looked at the ref and kind of threw his arms up, you knew there was goaltender interference. That is how you know in Nashville that it's goaltender interference, because UC Saros is not overly expressive. Unless he's in front of the camera, and then again, Meryl Streep and pads, but he is not overly dramatic. He is not interested in drawing a penalty or a call, but he immediately threw his arms up and looked at the ref. And that's when I knew, because UC Saros does not cry wolf. He owns his stuff in net. So yeah, I was like, okay, clearly I don't even need to see the replay. I saw UC Saros.
I mean, also, like, Foligno was standing on him.
It was like a game of Twister in the blue ice.
I was a little confused by Chicago. I mean, I guess on one hand, like, I am fascinated by the video coach position, and I've talked to Lawrence Filoni, Nashville's video coach, plus some others around the league, because I just find their job so interesting. And that's who is responsible for the coach's challenge. It's not the head coach. I mean, the head coach will verbalize it, but it's not usually his decision. So I just know how the league is with goaltender interference, and how it's such a kind of hit or miss thing. It's not very cut and dry the way that, like, offside is, but goaltender interference can be, it's very, very just kind of hit or miss, like I said. Yeah. So I found it interesting. If the official immediately waves it off for interference, that, to me, knowing what I know about how goaltender interference calls go in this league, I'm like, why would you challenge that? I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it to an extent. It's like it's more on principle. It's like you want to give yourselves the chance, but then you're also giving Nashville a free power play. Now, again, worked out well for Chicago, because
you're welcome.
Did not put a shot on goal during said power play. But in theory, I found that to be an interesting decision.
Yeah, especially like you said, goaltender interference, totally nebulous. But just looking at how these calls tend to go when they're waved off immediately, I was like, what are you, like, it has to be so clear cut to get an official to go, whoops, man, did I read that one wrong?
Right. And the video review was so quick. You knew it was like, okay, no.
Yeah, they're not wrestling existentially with this call at all. Yeah. Coming up, we are going to talk about some other drama that doesn't involve UC Saros in a commercial. It involves the Minnesota Wild game coming up, and comments made by Marcus Foligno, directed at Zach L'Heureux. You have heard us talk on this episode and other episodes about the amazing Locked On Predators insiders community that we have going here. We just want to invite you to be a part of that community as well. We get to talk pregame. Oh, we talk during the game. We, of course, talk after the game. We love getting questions and comments and viewer insight via our Locked On Insiders program. If you are interested in joining the subtext community, you can find information for that in the video description or in the link in our bio. All right, Emma, you and I went back and forth about even going here. We did. We went back and forth. We're like, look, we've both been 8th grade girls. We've been down this road before. But
not a time in my life that I would wish to revisit.
But here we are because we get paid to do it. And we also, some of our insiders have asked about these comments and questions. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to address this. Of course, you all remember in the previous game against the Minnesota Wild, Zachary L'Heureux was called for a slew foot against Jared Spurgeon. Jared Spurgeon left the game. He was given a game misconduct, left the game, also served a 3-game suspension handed down by player safety. You would think that it was done. But Marcus Foligno made some comments this week regarding Zachary L'Heureux and the game coming up tomorrow night. Now, we can only read some of his comments because he used some of the language that, we try not to use. But let me read what I can of what Marcus Foligno had to say. Let's see. Where can I can't read that first sentence. Okay, here we go. When a guy crosses the line in that sense, something has to be taken in measures. Yeah, he got suspended, but we lost Spurgeon. It's a dirty play. It should be more games. He shouldn't be able to just walk out of Excel that night because Spurgeon wasn't able to. When you see a guy cheap shotted, that stuff needs to be answered for, Foligno said. The L'Heureux thing is blatant, trying to hurt a guy. We got into the board so many times with D-men. You just guide them in. It's not the 80s or 90s where you can get away with anything on the forecheck. They've got a lot of guys on Nashville that understand the code, and the young kid doesn't understand. It's frustrating. There will be a price to pay for that game. I'm sure he'll have to answer to someone. Wah, wah, wah. Like insert Western Showdown at Noon music or, I don't know, High School Musical song.
There ain't room in this town for the two of us. It's what it sounds like.
It is. Go ahead, Emma. Go ahead.
Yes, it's a code thing. I get it. Like you want to make sure that stuff, you want to send a message, right? That like, hey, what you did is not cool. And we here at Locked On Predators agree that what Zach did was not cool and he should not do that again. He was punished. Hopefully he learns from it. I would say it's a little bit like, I would expect them to kind of rough him up a little bit. Like I said, sending a message, just being, like heavy hits, just things like that. But I don't know. I think about like, this just happened a couple weeks ago when Patrick Laine and Montreal played against Columbus for the first time since they traded him. And he made some really tone-deaf comments about his time in Columbus right before the game. And he's like, yeah, they're just okay with losing. And it's like, bro, even if you think that, read the room. Like, you don't say that. You don't say it to the freaking media when you're playing Columbus. Anyway, the Blue Jackets caught wind of his comments, did not take too kindly to them. And they were very, every time he had the puck, they were just hitting him hard and they were just going extra hard on him. Did end up leaving the game with a quote unquote injury. I think it was more of a protective measure by the coaching staff to remove him from the game. So I can see, like, I understand you want to send a message. You want to, kind of, again, just make it known what you did is not okay. You can't, you have to have consequences for your actions, blah, blah, blah. We want to take it into our own hands, not just with what the player safety did. But I think the way that Marcus Foligno, not to be confused with Chicago captain Nick Foligno, who is his brother,
who we saw yesterday.
Yes, so maybe Marcus is extra mad now because his brother's goal was disallowed against Nashville. So just real fired up. But I think that the way that he said it was a little too threatening. Like, I don't know. I just think it's just like, I get it. You're mad and you have every right to be. And I think if you're a little extra rough with L'Heureux and you know, along the boards and you battle extra hard with him, I think that's totally justified. But the way that he said it, I'm like, you want to talk about intent to injure? That's what those words sound like. And it just seems very like, I don't know. Again, I'm not supporting what Zach did. It was a bad play, should never happen again. But I think that the way that Marcus Foligno responded, you would think that Spurgeon was lost for the year. He's out
Yes.
a few weeks, which is significant. I understand that.
And you hate to see it. Like,
No,
we hate to see that.
we hate
Don't
to
wanna
see
see
it.
it.
No, but like we lost Spurgeon. It's like, okay, you didn't lose him for this season.
Mhm.
L'Heureux was punished. It's not like player safety gave him a slap on the wrist. Like, hey,
It was
you're a first time
sig
offender. Don't do it again. Like,
3-game suspension. That's, that's significant.
that's significant for a first time offense in the NHL. In the NHL, we are not looking at juniors. The NHL does not give two flying
Flag
whatever's
dogs.
flag knocks about what happened in juniors. And so again, first time offense, pretty significant. I think it was just this past week, Adrian Kempe from the
Yeah.
Kings was charged with a slew foot, and he just had a $5,000 fine.
Mhm.
So again, like as this could have gone, like again, $5,000, I would notice that. I don't think that these NHL players would so much. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I think that the NHL player safety department definitely sent a message. And it's not like, I understand that Minnesota feels this sense of, you know, protective duty over their
Righteous
captain.
indignation.
Fair. The feeling, the sentiment is totally fair. But it just seems like a bit much.
You know what it feels like to me when I read this? I immediately had flashbacks to Colonel Jessup in A Few Good Men. Like, "You don't want the truth because deep down in places you don't talk about at parties. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall." Um, I get it. Can't have a slew foot. Hate to see somebody get injured. I think it's overboard, and I think it's low-hanging fruit from the Minnesota media. I think it's a little low-hanging fruit from the fan base, but I don't blame the fan base. Look, passionate hockey fans in Minnesota, which is one of the greatest things about the sports, is the passion of the fan base. But you go back and you're like, "Oh, man, I know what he did in juniors." Okay, but take 5 more minutes and then investigate what kind of what has happened since then. Spend some time digging into what this organization has invested in and how they're dealing with Zach L'Heureux and how they are coaching him and what they're working on with him. And, maybe the narrative wouldn't be nearly as exciting or clickbaitable if you did all of the work, but that's neither here nor there. It's a good story.
Well, and what I think too, like what I would expect from this, obviously, we know that Foligno said these things. You best believe all the guys in the Predators locker room know that he said those things. Zach L'Heureux's a younger guy. Believe me, he has no problem, standing up for
He
himself.
gets it.
He
He's not
gets it.
dumb.
And he has no problem standing up for himself. But I would be watching guys like Luke Shen and Mike McCarron in that game against Minnesota. Those are the kind of enforcers they have right now. Other guys like Cole Smith, Jeremy Lazan are out. So I would keep an eye on Shen and McCarron because
Mhm.
we could definitely see them, I think, taking one for the team there.
Yeah. And again, I get why it is so frustrating for Foligno for the Wild. You don't want to see your captain go out of the game, but I think he goes too far. Talking about the code, just a little bit like you're a professional athlete. Like this is not the CIA. Also, he kind of takes a shot at the veterans. They've got guys in Nashville that understand the code, and the young kid doesn't understand. As if, Steven Stamkos and Ryan O'Reilly and Roman Josi and Filip Forsberg and Luke Shen are not teaching the code. Like, I just feel like, and then to say that kid shouldn't have walked out of Excel. He should miss as many games as Spurgeon did. Friends, let's take a moment and revisit November of 2023. Did Kirill Kaprizov miss as many games as Alexander Carrier when Kaprizov had an illegal hit on him? No, he did not, because that's actually, like, you can love the code as much as you want to, but that's actually not the way this works. And it doesn't work that way for a very good reason. And I love the passion, and I'm with you. Shouldn't have happened. Hate to see anybody injured in hockey, even the ones that are in my invisible backpack of hockey grudges. I don't wish them ill. I don't wish them injured. I just wish they would stay in the backpack. But that is just, I mean, dude.
I think the whole, like, they have guys in Nashville who understand the code thing. That's what makes me think he's going to be going after, like, the Shens and the McCarrans and being like, look, you understand, you know what your guy did. And now you got to answer for it. I'm like, okay, fight Luke Shen. Fight Luke Shen. See how that goes for you.
Bring a partner, because Shen prefers 2-on-1.
Yeah.
He's more of a 2-on-1 fight kind of guy. And look, you know what? If you, for whatever reason, feel like you need to make this hockey game about something that has taken place that sucked, that has been dealt with firmly from player safety, that has gone through the proper channels, I mean, all right. If you feel like you need to do it. But can we just, if you need to do this, if you need to Colonel Jessup it all up in here, just drop the gloves at the beginning of the game, and then can we just move on and play hockey? Can we just move on and play hockey?
Yeah. Like, just whatever you need to do to feel good about yourself.
Feel better about it. Then, do it. But then we would really just like to play hockey. And I'm with you. It's not because I'm scared for Zachary L'Heureux. It's not anything like that. It's that nobody, like, it doesn't have to be like this.
It just seems like a power trip, honestly. The whole, like, the young kid doesn't understand it and I got to teach him a lesson. It's like, okay. Like,
it's very get off my lawn Gran Torino. Another great trick, by the way.
It's just like, all right. Like, I don't know. It's like, okay, I get it. It's like hazing in fraternities and stuff. It's like, well, I went through this, so now the young kid has to go
That's right. I got to teach him how it works.
Yeah, it's like, why? I mean, again, I understand the code for sure. And I understand them wanting to take it, into their own hands to a degree. But the comments that he made it sound as if there was zero repercussion for L'Heureux.
Correct.
So it's just like,
and
okay,
that
I
Nashville veterans don't enforce the code.
Yeah, like, whatever.
Whatever.
Let's just
again. Emma and I have been, and I mean no disrespect, we've been 8th grade girls. We've done scenarios like this time and time again in the middle school cafeteria. So just for our viewing pleasure, it'd be great if you just drop the gloves at puck drop, get it over with, and then can we play hockey?
Yeah.
We'll see if that's what happens on Saturday night as the Minnesota Wild come to town to take on the Nashville Predators, who, wait for it, are on a 2-game win streak. Hardly even know what to do with this. We will see what happens Saturday night. And of course, you all know we will be back Monday. We're going to recap whatever we see happen Saturday night, whether it has to do with goals scored, defense, or the code. So be sure you tune in on Monday for that. Emma, before we sign off, where can everyone find you and your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at The Hockey News.
You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can see pictures of my tire blowout at LO_Predators as well. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well.
Seriously, y'all go check out the pictures of that tire. It's unreal.
It's a phenomenon. It's an actual vehicular phenomenon. That's going to do it for this week's episodes of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks, y'all, so much for making us your first listen of the day. We're going to be back Monday with all new episodes. We'll see you then.